All right, so we've got some fun data, but let's make it even funner with the data. Let's use some real world data. And one of the most important skills you can acquire in web development is being able to interact with APIs. So let's use an API here called the Poke API, which actually has data on all of the Pokemon in the Pokedex. And if I'm on the home page now, and it lets you do some sample runs here. Let's take a look here. What if we just get rid of these species altogether? Well, what we end up with now is it returns 20 items, each with, okay, that's the first one in the Pokedex, Bulbasaur, and a URL here. So what if I want more? What if I want all of the Gen 1? Well, there's 151 Gen 1 ones. So what if I type question mark limit equals 151, submit. All right, cool. Now it actually returned 151. If I go down to the bottom one is Mew. Nice. So we got all the entire Gen 1 Pokedex here. And if I just take this URL that it gave me here and I just put this into my browser, it gives me all of them in this very hard to read format. If I do pretty print, it will give me some more information here. Now, this data is called JSON data, and JSON actually comes from JavaScript. JSON means JavaScript object notation, and it's just a way of transferring data and then being able to easily interpret it in JavaScript to take that data and convert it to a JavaScript object. So, wait, why did that? Oh, I didn't want the offset. Just limit 151. That's weird. It added the offset. So the offset essentially tells you how far to start ahead, and then, yeah, so this gives me everything up to Mew. And basically, if I send a request to this URL, I'm going to get back this JSON data and I'll be able to work with it. Now, what if I want to create a table out of all this JSON data? Well, that'd be kind of cool. But all I get is the name and a URL. Well, let's at least see if we can do something with the name first. Maybe we can get these names out and at least list the names of each of them. It's worth a shot. So let's go back over. First of all, I'm going to grab this URL here. And we're going to work on creating a fetch for this. So you can put this in different places. I like to create a folder for like services or resources. I'll just call it resources. And we'll make a resource file called Pokemon or fetch Pokemon, and we'll have it .ts because this is not going to be doing anything with components or JSX. It's only going to be doing TypeScript stuff. So how do we actually get this data here? Well, we will create a function called, it's going to be a function that we export called fetch all Pokemon. So essentially, this is going to fetch all of these Pokemon from here, at least 151 of them. Whoops. And we'll say const URL equals this. So we have our URL variable here that's going to be equivalent to this URL here, which we know if we put this in the browser, it's going to return 151 Pokemon. And now we need to fetch it. So we'll say const response, because this returns a response when we fetch it. We'll say fetch URL. So it's going to fetch this URL and assign it to the response. Now, the only issue with this is if let's do something called console log here, response. The only issue with this is that this takes time. Now, if I want to see this in action, what I can do is I'm going to go over to my page.tsx, and we'll go ahead and import this function that I made called import fetch all Pokemon. And let's just try calling this function here. We'll say fetch all Pokemon, and we'll just run the function that we imported. So This is going to reference that function that we created. Let's close this stuff out for now. It's a lot of stuff. It gets complicated quickly. So fetch all Pokemon is going to call this function. It's going to run this fetch function, which is a built-in JavaScript function that fetches data from a website. And then we're going to log the response that we get. Now, if I save all and then I run this, oh, it actually ran it already, I think. We see that we get back this thing, promise pending. And if I mouse over this fetch, it returns a promise of a response. Now, what a promise is, it's, imagine it's like an egg, and the egg hasn't hatched yet. So we don't know what's inside the egg. So until that egg hatches, it just kind of gets passed around and wherever we're accessing it from. So this console log, where it actually prints it in my console, occurs right after this line of code is executed, but before it has time to actually fetch that URL. So all we're seeing is the egg. We're not seeing what's inside of the egg. So we have to wait for that egg to hatch before we can do anything with it. And there's a couple different ways to accomplish this, but the cleanest way to do this, the way to do this in a very legible way, whenever possible, you should use an asynchronous function. So before the word function, we're going to type the word async. And async means that it's going to run things in order and we can wait for things to occur. So I'm going to await the fetching of this URL. And now it's going to sit here and it's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to wait until this egg hatches and then I'm going to log the response. So now if I save this and it runs, now it actually gives me all that data that I was waiting for. Let me refresh here. Why isn't it? Oh, is it going to be logged? It shouldn't be logging it here. No. You're embarrassing me. Oh, okay. So it returned a response. Now it returned a response object with a status code of 200, which means the response was correct. Return the headers and all the data, everything else. But we need to work with the data, the stuff that was actually returned, so we can get the body of it. Or what we can do is actually we'll go const data equals await response.json, and this JSON function is going to, if the response has any JSON data returned in it, which we know it does because that's what this is right here, and we can actually see it in the network traffic. If we go to network and I click refresh here, I can actually see in the headers that the response is going to be in JSON format. I'm trying to figure out where that is. Maybe the response. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to, I think it should indicate here, sorry, that can't remember where that would be, but I thought it would tell you that it has JSON data here somewhere. I feel like I'm just missing it. Oh well, anyway, your fetch will know that there's JSON data in the response and it's going to parse it out. So now instead of logging the response, let's log data instead. And let's refresh our website and look down here and we can see all that data came through now. All 151 Pokemon came through here and all the data is here. Now, if we look at the data, how it's returned, we have to figure out where it's actually being returned at. So this is an object that's being passed, and then these are the keys for the object. Count, next. Ah, that's why, because next is the next 151. That's why that next has the offset of 151. Previous is null, and then results. So we don't want the count. We don't want any of this stuff. We just want the results. So now if I do instead data.results, it will just give me those results without the count and everything else. So now it's just giving me all 151 results, and that's all I want. And these are going to represent the rows of our table here. So let's go back over to our page. Now we're fetching all these Pokemon. How often do I want to actually run this fetch? Well, I only want to run it when the page is initially loaded. I only want to fetch this when the page is initially loaded. And in order to do that, we have to use React hooks. And we're going to get into that in the next video.